Thank everybody for joining the actual state of email deliverability. This presentation is in partnership with our partners over at unspam.email. Unspam is a email evaluation tool to help provide scoring and predict outcomes with heat maps and potential challenges with your email creatives before they go out. So definitely they've been a great partner of ours, and we're excited to be joining this webinar today. For start, so I'm Larry Heslin. I'm the head of accounts and sales operations at Email Industries. I'm joined with Matthew Bernhout. He's our principal deliverability advisor at Email Industries. And for our operation and business, we've been in the email deliverability space for the better half of 18 years. We have 22 deliverability consultants and analysts spread out throughout the world. And our primary focus is to help people figure out, why they're not hitting the inbox and get them back and stay there. So without further ado, Matt, I'll pass the keys over to you.
Right on. Thanks very much, Larry. I always like to start with this quote when I'm working on different presentations. Most people ignore deliverability until deliverability becomes a problem for their brand and messages start bouncing, going missing, delivering to the spam folder, etc. So, what does that mean for you? It means that when a message goes missing or goes to the spam folder, you're losing opportunities to communicate with your customers. You're missing out on revenue. You're missing out on that engagement that we all crave so much when it comes to getting mail delivered and getting messages to your consumers in the appropriate place. I know there's always conversation around, is the promotions tab still the inbox? Absolutely. Right? If you are in promo, updates, social, primary, you're in the inbox. And it's always one of those things that, people seem overly concerned about. But you also have to remember, not everybody reads their email in an environment that has tabs. So if you're using Outlook or you're using Thunderbird or you're using various other third-party mail clients, those tabs don't exist. It's just all the inbox. So that's something important as you're thinking about, where messages are landing, what the implications are, and how your consumers actually read your message. So if you're working with a platform that tells you the types of mail clients your clients are using, definitely pay attention to that because it does make a difference. And remember, it's all the inbox, and that's where you want to be. Consumers look for promos in their promo tabs. So those are certainly things that you don't necessarily want to chase, if you will, too much, the primary tab. You want to make sure that you're focused on getting messages into the inbox, all encompassing. There are several things that are going to tell you you're having delivery problems, and we're going to go through a bunch of those today in order to help you really understand the things to pay attention to proactively catch, like, are we sliding? Are we missing out on things? And give yourself time to course correct and keep yourself in the inbox as much as possible. So we want to make sure that we are aware of those challenges. But let's look back in time just a little bit, right? So what happened last year? So in the fall of 2023, Google and Yahoo jointly announced that they were going to make significant changes to their sender best practices. Those came into force starting in February 2024 and took place over a series of months, about 6 months, to fully roll out across the board. This included proper authentication for all email. If you didn't have proper authentication, you would have started to see rate limiting bounces, and eventually they would have stopped accepting your mail. They wanted one-click unsubscribe for all bulk mail. Bulk mail has been defined as, in some situations, it's sending more than 5,000 messages a day. But depending on the mailbox provider you talk to, some of them have much lower thresholds. Some might say it's 1,000 messages a day. And others, like Yahoo, don't put a label on that. They simply say, you are a bulk sender when we determine you are. And it's a one-way trip. So if you cross that threshold on one day, guess what? You are now going forward considered a bulk sender. So regardless of the message sizes or the volume of messages you're sending, you want to make sure that you are following those best practices. in regards to, you're sending 100 messages, you're sending 1,000 messages, you're sending 100 million messages. You want to make sure you are sending appropriately, following the sender best practices. You also want to implement, or at least work with your ESP to ensure that it's implementing feedback ID headers in the messages. Those are really important for the Google Postmaster tools. It's basically a header that gets inserted. It has 4 values that can mean things like campaign ID, list ID, message ID, ESP name, and it allows you to look in their feedback loop to determine which of your campaigns may or may not be causing problems. Yahoo also has a feedback loop, which they relaunched last year. And if your ESP hasn't registered for it, you can go register for it as long as you have a valid DKIM signature with your domain. So it's very simple to do, but you definitely want to make sure you're getting that complaint metric back from the various mailbox providers. Uh, in regards to keeping your data and your consumer expectations met. So if you're seeing a lot of complaints, maybe you're not meeting those expectations. Again, this is something your ESP should be taking care of in regards to setting those up and managing them for you. But there's nothing that stops you from going to register for this as well so that you get copies and you can see the content yourself. Um, and you may want to look at your corporate mail, or if you're using multiple ESPs, to have a centralized place to collect all of this. Now, in April of 2025, so this is very recent, Google actually clarified a number of different things under their sender best practices, and this will be a continued evolution. These things result around, your domain reputation, your sender reputation, the age of your domain, many of the best practices they've already published. And if you're not meeting their expectations, you may notice your display name doesn't show. It might just show your email address, or it might show portions of your email address. And what Google is attempting to do there is they're attempting to allow consumers a little more behind the curtain to say, do I know this sender? Is it someone that's trying to be misleading? Is it a domain that I recognize? So if you're experiencing that with your emails, when you're seeing tests and you're seeing things around the display name of your messages not necessarily showing the friendly from that you're expecting, whether it's your brand name or an individual's name, you may be crossing a line that Google has determined is no longer acceptable. So definitely want to make sure that if you see that behavior, you kind of pay attention to what what your messages look like and who you're sending to in order to make sure you're playing on the right side of the rules. So again, these rules are publicly available. You should familiarize yourself with them under the Sender Best Practices articles by Google or in the Yahoo Sender Hub. So Yahoo as well has basically their Postmaster page, which tells you all their rules for sending email to their consumers. So what have we seen in that period between February 2024 and now? Well, we've seen a bunch of other mailbox providers also step in and say, these are really great rules. We're going to start to follow them as well. So Apple has come out with very similar practices and requirements around authentication, DMARC support, SPF, etc. Complaint rates. Outlook has come out most recently. Again, May 5th, they came out and said, we're making proper authentication. So you may have noticed a bit of bumpiness with some mail in Soft over the last, call it 8 weeks. They've been making filtering. We've noticed a lot more senders having delivery issues with Microsoft as a result. So they've really sort of turned the knobs and dials and made things significantly harder for senders. Orange, which is a large provider in Europe, has also come out. So their acceptable complaint threshold, for example, was significantly higher than other mailbox providers, but they've now come out and said, we're also going to work towards that 0.3%. So they've moved from from 1% to 0.6%, and they're going to eventually get down to 0.3%, just like the other mailbox providers. So we're seeing an alignment basically following the trend that Yahoo and Google have set. Other big news, this was just announced just a couple weeks ago. AT&T, for all you senders in North America that send to AT&T, while Yahoo has been managing the back end of their email platform, they've not been managing the front end spam filtering. That is changing. So AT&T Mail will now move into the regular stream that follows the same processes and same filtering as Yahoo Mail does, and all of the other brands that Yahoo supports, AT&T, sorry, AOL, Verizon, etc. So all of that is going to start to realign. Your ESP, or if you manage your own infrastructure, you need to make sure that any rules that you've applied to the Yahoo sending is updated to also now include AT&T.net mail. So there are things that are constantly changing, and we're going to continue to see this trend, I think, going forward. The last piece I think that's going to be really interesting for some senders is Comcast has recently started testing their DKIM feedback loop. Now, this is a non-traditional feedback loop. It doesn't send you sort of an ARF complaint. It doesn't send you the content. They're basically going to selectively allow you to choose some headers, and they're going to send you those headers. So again, this is one of those situations where you want to talk to your ESP about the headers that are available, mail that you're sending off their platform, create those records, and you may have your ESP reach out and say, look, there's some new records we need to create. Or if they're managing your subdomain, they may create these records on their own. So they're going to know what these are, and they're going to start to get that feedback. And it's going to include things maybe like a message ID, maybe a feedback ID header, but it's not going to be a traditional feedback loop. So there's going to be some processing that needs to happen in the background in order to understand what the inbound data is that comes from this feedback loop. So this is very new. It's a brand new standard. And so far, Comcast Xfinity is the first one to sort of roll it out, as their team has been behind the development of this standard. So all very exciting, all very new sort of content coming out from the mailbox providers. Lots of great development in the space, providing feedback to senders regarding their mail programs. And honestly, I like the idea of some of this alignment coming into force, because it really gets rid of some of the guesswork to say, am I doing things right for Apple? Am I doing things right for Google? When you can simply say, here's the rules, simply follow them across the board for different mailbox providers. So what's coming on the horizon, right? We just have to think ahead, sort of start planning for things. So, upgrade to the feedback loop programs and postmaster tools from Yahoo. This is constantly in development. Pay attention to the Sender Hub. If you've never looked it up, search for it. Google search for Yahoo Sender Hub. This is where you can manage everything. They're going to tell you how to work BIMI on their platform, how to work feedback loops, how to work AMP or sort of rich messages in regards to higher engaging content, whether it's AMP or whether it's kinetic email, all of that stuff. Yahoo has the instructions on how to implement these on the platform. We're also going to continue to see the tightening of infrastructure, the tightening of requirements for authentication, especially as we move into the next generation. Now, I don't have a timeline for any of these sort of next generation rollouts. They're all sort of still in the process of being developed by the community, implemented and sort of tested in more controlled environments. But we're going to see the future of DKIM. So DKIM 2 is what they're calling it currently. Will be coming out. DKIM 2 is going to be a lot more secure. It's going to have some ability to survive forwarding better than we've seen with some of the current technologies. It's going to have some additional features that also sort of relate to DMARC. There's lots of things going on with DKIM 2. That will be something to watch for. And again, a lot of this stuff is going to be dependent on your ESP participating. But if you manage your own network, these are the things you need to also pay attention to so that you can start to consider what it looks like for you to implement these on your solution and your platform. The next generation of DMARC is coming out. So, DMARC's been around a little over a decade. We've learned a lot of things, some of them good. Some of them were like, why did we do this 10 years ago? And we're going to make adjustments with those solutions, and some of those things will change. Like, for example, RUF reports, which is the forensic feedback, um, or the failure feedback for DMARC. Not a lot of people send those, right? They don't send them because of privacy concerns. They don't send them because of the content. They don't send them because of, GDPR style reasoning. So we're probably just going to drop those, right? Percent tag, we're going to drop. There's a whole bunch of things that we're just going to evolve these standards to be more realistic to how people use them, and more aligned in that sense. Hopefully we're going to continue to see more feedback loops be developed. So the DKIM feedback loop from Comcast is just one example. There's a feedback loop. That's another open source one that Abusix has been championing for some time. CFBL is what they call it. Again, these are all things that you could currently implement, but they're not widely adopted. So if it's something that you feel you want to be cutting edge, you want to look at, definitely do it. If it's something you want to work with your ESP to make sure they're supporting, those are always great questions. And it becomes that chicken and egg. If we get more ESPs supporting it, we might get more mailbox providers supporting it. If we get more mailbox providers supporting it, we're going to get more ESPs supporting it. So we can push and pull as best we can in the community to continue to drive adoption for some of these new technologies. We've also seen the rise of subscription management portals. So these are new, they're still rolling out. Some people have access to them, some people don't. I've seen lots of screenshots and lots of conversation around the subscription management portal. Basically, it's going to be a place based on the the list unsubscribe headers and email. Mailbox providers are going to make it easy to see what you're subscribed to, and you'll be able to toggle a button that says, I want to unsubscribe, I want to subscribe directly from the subscription management portal. You won't need to go into the actual messages and find the unsubscribe link anymore. And as a deliverability professional, I'm going to tell you, unsubscribes are way more healthy than spam complaints. So ensuring that you're supporting that technology in your email, ensuring that you're supporting it in the headers and your platform providers are supporting it properly, are things that are no longer just good suggestions, they're actually requirements. And those requirements then allow mailbox providers to build on top of those. So why is email hard, right? A lot of people think push a button, an email goes from my desktop to the recipient's desktop, and you don't necessarily think about all the steps in between. There are really a lot of steps in between, and this is even a simplified document describing sort of that workflow compared to the actual steps, right? You have outbound mail servers that are going to filter messages or look for bad content. You have authentication solutions, reputation providers looking at messages. You have DMARC then being evaluated to determine is the message properly authenticated. Then it's determined what is the policy, if it is authenticated or not authenticated. Then it goes into the mailbox. Then there's some spam filtering. Then it determines which folder to go. So there's a whole lot of steps that happen between point A and point B that not everyone always considers. And there's a lot of opportunity for something to break. And that's where you need to continue to pay attention to what's going on with my messaging so that you can make adjustments, so that if there is something that's broken, conversations can be happen between providers, whether it's a ESP and a mailbox provider or two different mailbox providers having to talk to say, why is mail not delivering appropriately? Then someone can take the corrective action to either fix a bad filter, fix bad authentication, or potentially if you've had a compromised website or account, fix those things to in order to enable messages to continue to deliver. And like all things, what's authentication? What is reputation? Right? Reputation is built of a whole bunch of data inputs. Again, this is oversimplified. I've heard some mailbox providers say they look at 2,000 data points for every message that comes in. They're checking the headers, the IPs, the domains, content, who it's proxying through, where the links are going, who the providers are, what the websites are that are landing on. So they're looking at all kinds of different things. on top of their own internal reputation solution or external block list or reputation providers. So there's a whole bunch of things that happen on top of how did my email flow to get to the other side, on top of how does the sender behave and what is their individualized reputation. There's a lot of pieces that make email complicated. And that's why, my favorite hashtag always is email is hard, right? Email is hard. So, certainly a lot of pieces to always consider and keep tabs on as you are sending email. But what can we do as senders, right? I feel like I've talked about these a few times, but I mean, these are the core elements of email that we need to get right. So SPF needs to be configured. I see a lot of bad SPF records out there. This is something we spend a lot of time as consultants working with customers on to fix. People have multiple SPF records, which is a violation. People have SPF records with too many includes. Uh, Honestly, some of this is bad advice or old advice from providers that just never get removed. They say, I need you to add my include record into your SPF record. And then the next one says, add it, add it, add it, add it. All of a sudden, you have too many includes in your SPF record. DHIM is another one. It's fragile. DNS is fragile. It can cause problems in regards to timeouts. There could be caching issues. If you're rotating DKIM keys, there could be reputational issues between the difference in keys. All of those things need to be accounted for in your email. Obviously, getting feedback internally to your network is important as well. But where are some of the pieces maybe as a sender you don't control, but you need to be aware of, right? TLS, making sure that communications between networks, and this is clearly something the network owner is responsible for, is to ensure that that conversation is secure as best as possible so that messages aren't delivering over clear text where someone might be able to observe the content of those messages. So definitely make sure your providers are sending in a secure, communicative way using TLS encryption between platforms. BIMI, if you've not heard of it, requires authentication, requires strong authentication, DMARC enforcement. This will enable you as a brand owner to put your logo in the email client. It's becoming widely adopted. There are more than a dozen mail providers that support it, including Google, Yahoo, Comcast, and a number of international providers as well, like Fastmail, WebDE, and several others in Asia Pacific as well. It's a centralized place. So you could say my logo should show up the same everywhere because it's your logo. Doesn't matter which platform it is, doesn't matter which website it is, it should always be your logo. And then obviously DMARC. We've seen DMARC important over the last year. So, what are the types of behavioral signals that you should be looking for when it comes to understanding are things moving in the right direction, right? So, reading feedback loops, making sure that you're not getting too many complaints. If you are getting complaints, trying to adjust and figure out what's causing those complaints. Are you meeting your consumer expectation? Did they sign up for a 25% off coupon and then they don't care about any of the other messages? They just wanted the discount on their purchase. Did they sign up for a coupon and now you're sending them other, messages or partner offers that maybe they weren't expecting? Or maybe in some cases you're just over mailing in regards to understanding that maybe someone doesn't want 12 messages a week from you, right? Maybe it's not breaking news. Maybe it's like, if you are a retailer, do I need 12 promotional emails on today's discount, today's sale? Or is 7 the right number? Or is 5 the right number? Those types of things. Enabling that option for your consumers to understand how frequently to communicate or receive communications from you is certainly something to think about. We have a question. Should we pay for BIMI? I'm 100% biased. I am the communication chair for the BIMI group. I think so. I think BIMI, if you can afford it, I mean, I understand it's not the cheapest of solutions. The certificates are very expensive. You don't have to pay for it. You can do a self-asserted record to get things started. It will show up in some of the mailbox providers, but if you want it to show up in Google and Apple, for example, you do need to have a certificate, whether it is a VMC or a CMC. So there are two different types of certificates you could buy. Um, Again, I anecdotally, what I've seen working with customers that implement it, they do see benefit from it because consumers, people in general, recognize logos faster than they recognize text. So I would say yes, if it works into your budgeting. I know it's not a budgetable item for everybody, but nothing stops you from supporting it for free until you can afford to pay for it. You just get different distribution of where it goes out. So, going back to behavioral signals, block list alerts. So if there are issues with repeated block listings, depending on which block list it is, you could have reputational issues. If you're repeatedly listed on, say, Spam Cop, typically you're either sending to someone who's going to report all your mail as junk, or you're sending to spam traps. So clean those out, use list hygiene, look at engage, look at who's clicking, look at who's opening, and ensuring that you are sending to your active audience and not to just random addresses or indefinitely sending to people that are no longer active and engaged in your list. Clearly, if you're sending messages that look like phishing, expect to be treated like it. If you have really low engagement, you're probably have too big of segments. Resegment your messages. Look at how you're going to have those conversations. And to say, like, here's my hyperactive VIP members, and here's my, totally inactive group audience that never engages, never does anything. How do I want to communicate with those two groups differently? And then monitor spam traps, right? There are lots of services out there. There are lots of providers out there that will give you some feedback around, are you hitting traps? Are you delivering messages to old domains, etc.? Understand that you need to have a good hygiene process. Your ESP needs to have a good hygiene process. And yes, ESPs across the board don't hygiene the same way. I know that's a common question. One mailbox provider um, might be a little bit more aggressive in list hygiene than another. So you will see differences in how your lists behave and how your lists, if you transition from one ESP to another, how those metrics differentiate between them. And that goes for everything, right? It's not just spam traps, it's also things like engagement. Some mailbox or some ESPs, apologies, will filter out what we refer to as non-human interactions or bot clicks, bot opens, and others won't. So you might have one ESP you've been sending from for a long time. Your open rates look fantastic. They're 75%. Your click rates look great. They're 20%. Then you go to another ESP who does filtering around non-human interactions. And then, you might see your open rates are more realistically 30% instead of inflated by bots. You may actually also see clicks change because they're filtering out bot clicks that they can identify. It doesn't mean your performance is any different. What it's telling you is one provider isn't doing as much filtering as the other to try to give you more accurate results. But remember, all delivery starts with data. All delivery issues start with data. You either have really good data and you're using it well, or potentially you have really good data and you're almost abusing it. You're over mailing, you're over sending, you're causing consumers to really have that expectation of why am I getting so much mail? And you're creating a bad experience for consumers. So understand your data, how you manage it. The other piece to this is there are lots of bots, right? More bots, more AI, more whatever we want to call it, bad actors, malicious people that will go out and subscribe to your mail. And they might subscribe to your mail because they're trying to flood someone's mailbox so they can compromise an account for that end user. Or they might just be doing it to be a nuisance, right? There's lots of reasons that people do this. So you want to make sure you take some defense against that. You want to make sure you've implemented reCAPTCHA or some type of bot monitoring on your web forms. You want to look at those types of things to say, are these interactions actually real people that are trying to subscribe? Um, they could flood your list, right? I've worked with customers in the past that didn't really pay attention to this. And when we started looking through why are they having delivery issues, we found thousands of these bot subscription addresses on their list. That's where those things are causing delivery problems for them. There are lots of tools that do real-time data validation. Clearly being a bit biased again, Alfred.email is a product developed and managed by Email Industries. We would recommend you try it. We're going to give everybody on the call a free 500 credits, so certainly do try it out. The type of consent that you use, an implied versus an express consent, versus even an opt-out consent. So if you are looking at how people are getting onto your list and you can track them separately, this becomes really important. As a Canadian myself, our anti-spam law has two definitions of consent, implied or express. There is no opt-out consent in Canada. It has to be one of the two in regards to sending communications of a commercial nature to people. So understanding the geographical regions you're sending to is also something that is very important when you are working with your lists and your data and managing the types of consent and expectations of your consumer. Also pay attention to things like, how many complaints you're getting, how many unsubscribes you're getting. If your unsubscribe rate is, greater, 1% seems very high for an unsubscribe rate. If it's greater than 1%, you may need to look at what you're mailing and how you're managing it, especially if you're starting to see delivery issues. If you're not seeing delivery issues and it's 1%, maybe that's just the way your list behaves. Every list is different, but 1% seems very high. So if 1 in 100 people every time you mail them is asking to stop, you really want it to be more like 1 in 1,000 people. Where does content come into play for delivery? Text to image ratio is really a big one. Think mobile first, right? You want people to be able to easily click on links. You want people to really be able to understand your message. You want images to load quickly, right? So we want to optimize images. We say 400 KB here, but if they could be smaller, that's even better. Anything over 400 KB really starts to impact delivery for messages. It really starts to impact how people are able to access your mail on a mobile device, right? So think about message size, think about image size. If you're sending all image emails, think about how you could use live text instead. Accessibility is a big thing as well. Recently, the EU has come out with an accessibility standard mandate. In the US, we've had the ADA requirements for quite some time. So make sure that your messages are accessible to people. There are lots of guides that you can read. There are lots of sort of informational websites around ADA compliance for email. Yes, in the questions here, there's a question that says, am I talking about a 70% live text to 30% image? Ideally, that's where you want to be. You want to have more live text than image within your messages. So content should be scannable. Again, people have short attention spans. They receive a lot of email. They're trying to skim messages very quickly. They're trying to certainly understand what you're asking them. So make messages scannable. Most people don't want to read walls of text when it comes to email. So certainly make sure that everything is digestible and easy to understand, and your calls to action is very clear. As well as display names. I would 100% tell you no emojis in your display name. Changing that, especially with Google's new requirements, you're going to see some behavioral changes. So don't put check marks in your name. Don't put red buttons, green buttons, blue circles, etc. in your display name. You just use text and make it clear. right? Make it clear the brand that's sending the message to an individual. I get lots of emails that come from people versus the brand. I don't know who your CEO is. Chances are I don't. So if you send me an email from your CEO and it's just their name, it looks like any other email that I get. I'm not going to know it's from your brand. Very few brands have recognizable CEOs as their name. So make sure you're including the branding on the beginning of the friendly from. I'm going to know what your brand is more so than who an individual in your organization is or who your company celebrity avatar is, etc. So definitely make sure your friendly from is readable to consumers. So I know I've mentioned this a few times, but certainly I want to call it out just a little more, right? Non-human interactions, bot clicks, bot opens. These are causing a large number of people concern when it comes to, are my metrics valid, right? Inflated open rates are caused because services such as Apple MPP, Google Image Bot, Yahoo Image Bot, they're going to take those images and cache them. They're going to display them locally. And why are they doing this? For the same reason that we say keep your images small. They want them to render quickly for their consumers. They're trying to help the consumer experience. But what does that do? It basically says, oh, look, there's all these people that opened your email because they've downloaded them and they've cached all those images, including your open beacons. So you're seeing an inflated open rate. You're seeing an inflated request for those open beacons. And you need to account for that. There are services out there that will try to help you determine, is this a bot that asked for this image, or is it a person that asked for this image? Some ESPs filter them, some ESPs don't. And that's really a question to have with your providers. And again, a lot of what you may experience as this is causing more friction, this is causing more pain for me, it's really throwing my metrics out of whack. These are the things that mailbox providers are doing in a sense to help their consumer and help their, customer have a better experience as well. So definitely make sure you're understanding that open rates are inflated. Even click rates are inflated, right? There's a lot of phishing, there's a lot of fraud that happens. A lot of businesses are trying to protect their own network and their own infrastructure. I don't know about you, but I'm getting kind of tired about hearing, X was just compromised and all of your consumer data was stolen and is now on the dark web, right? These are the things that businesses are looking at to say, what can I do to protect my business assets and my business entity from phishing, from attacks, from vulnerabilities? So they're using anti-spam filters that are clicking on links to go see what the destination page is to say, does this look like phishing? Does this look like it's going to compromise? Is it leading to something that's going to be a harmful download? All of those things are happening, and they're, from a marketing point of view, throwing your metrics a little out of whack. So you need to be able to account for those and understand that not everything is going to be exactly the way you want it to be. So we need to kind of shift and focus on what are the other metrics we can look at that might be more realistic. How many people purchased? How many people downloaded the file I wanted them to? How many people showed up in store and purchased? How many people registered for a meeting with my team? Whatever your KPI is that is more tangible, that is not going to be something a bot is going to complete, those are the things you should be focusing on as you're building your programs going forward. This is the reason, right? Phishing, compromised accounts, business email compromise. These are all the reasons that these security solutions have come out and started to engage and try to determine, are these things the target? And we're talking billions of dollars annually impacted by these bad actors. And that's why the good actors are trying to stop them. Now, I love this example. The GIF, if you've ever seen Terminator 2, there's a part where they call home and he says, is Wolfie okay? Right? Knowing that Wolfie's not the name of his dog. And the T-1000 or whatever the bad Terminator is in Terminator 2, I can't remember his name. comes out and says, yeah, Wolfie's just fine. And then he says, okay, well, now we know your parents are dead. Because he asked a question that only somebody who knew the answer could verify. Same thing happened here in the example of Ferrari. So there was a deep fake of the CEO asking them to do something, asking them to change a payment. And the individual on the receiving end of that request basically said something along the lines of, um, I lent you you told me to read a book. You told me to read a book last week. I can't remember the name of it. What was the name of the book you told me to read again so I can go out and buy it? Right? That piece of information would only be known by the two people that were involved in that conversation a week ago. Understanding that that person would be like, oh, I don't remember the name of the book, or they give a fake name of that book, would enable a person who's being requested to do something that opportunity, that two-factor authentication, if you will, to say this isn't the right person that I'm talking to. With the age of AI, um, we're seeing deep fakes of people on video. We're seeing deep fakes of people on the phone, voice modulation, etc. So definitely understand that these things are happening in the real world and actually cause real dollar value losses for business. And so again, it's an arms race of who can be smarter than the other side. And unfortunately, many people get caught in the middle that are trying to do the right thing, but maybe not with the best practices. So how do you know if you have a delivery issue? Well, over time, we're going to look at trends, right? Are your bounce rates increasing? Are your complaints increasing? Are your opens and clicks declining? Are you seeing these changes? These are all early warning systems that potentially you're about to, or you're starting to slide into a delivery issue, right? More bounces in regards to delays, failures, more soft bounces you're seeing in your reporting. So if you're used to like 1% soft bounce rate, and all of a sudden it's 5% soft bounce rate, something has changed. You need to pay attention to it. Or maybe, you're one of those brands that customers call to say, I'm not getting your email anymore. What happened? It actually happens. There are customers that can call to say, I'm not getting your email because they expect it. And that's actually something you want. You want customers to reply or call and say, why am I no longer getting email? Uh, these are the types of things that are early warning systems that your reputation has shifted and your delivery is about to get significantly harder. Paying attention and watching these trends early and over time definitely are going to be things that help you understand and diagnose what the challenge is. Then you can kind of go backwards a few weeks or months or whatever it happens to be as that change started to say, what did we do? What did we do last quarter? And if you look at it and say, oh, we implemented a new partner who's feeding us data, that partner maybe is giving you bad data. Or, we redesigned our website. Well, maybe you forgot to put the bot, protections on your new forms. So now you're starting to see bots insert content um, into your forms. I love this question that just came in. Are open rates still worth paying close attention to versus click rates? I mean, I like open rates, but not from the sense you used to look at them to say, is my message successful? Right? I like to look at open rates to say, are my open rates consistent or relatively consistent, plus minus a couple percent on any given message? Because what you're seeing, if you have a 40% open rate for the last quarter, and next week, all of a sudden you have a 20% open rate, it likely means a large portion of your mail is now going in the spam folder, right? The image caching that happens is happening to messages in the inbox, right? And it happens at different points depending on who the provider is. But if you're seeing a huge decline in open rates, it likely means you're having a delivery issue. So it's not that you're getting maybe more bounces because the messages are still delivering, they're just not delivering to the inbox. So use it as a metric to say, am I seeing a consistent, relatively consistent open rate in regards to messages making it to the inbox? Don't use it as a KPI to say our program's super successful because we've got a really good open rate. It's direction. It's no longer a metric. And depending on who you talk to, it's never been a great metric though. Another question, we have to determine our email success based on other KPIs instead of opens and click-through rates. However, we do not have a software that can track direct relation of our email to call to action. Small nonprofit, we also do not have the capacity to run this type of analyst manually. How do we do this? So, I mean, clearly looking at website traffic, right? You send an email, you should see a lift in website traffic. You should see an increase in donations. You should see an increase in whatever your message is trying to um, get your recipients to do. I would also say if ESP, open rate and click rate tracking, is pretty much table stakes. Every platform should be able to do it out of the box. So if you're using an ESP that doesn't do open and click rate tracking, you may want to consider a different ESP. If you are using an ESP and you're not doing open and click rate tracking, it may be something that you just need to go back and enable. So looking at what you can do in the inbox, right? It's going to be all the things. This is more of the summary slide that we're looking at, right? So good hygiene, good segmentation, sunsetting old contacts that don't engage anymore and haven't engaged in some period of time, ensuring that you want to unsubscribe. It's not just a legal requirement. It's actually something that consumers, when they say stop, you should stop. Follow the best practices, do some inbox testing, subscribe to your own email, subscribe to a Yahoo address, subscribe to a Hotmail address, subscribe to a Gmail address, monitor your own accounts, right? These are types of things you can do for free and pay attention to the delivery. Also, take yourself out of the equation and say, is this message that I'm sending actually going to be valuable to the recipient? Sometimes feel like people send mail just to send mail. They don't always think, is this relevant to a segment versus the entire list? And again, it comes down to sometimes team size, sometimes budget, sometimes all of these things, but you do have to think about them sort of longer term to say, is this relevant to the audience I'm sending it to? Uh, Authentication, no longer just a recommendation, it's a must. Make sure you've got it, make sure you understand it. There are lots of tools out there to help you. One, maybe the best tool that I know right now is aboutmy.email. Larry, if you could put that in the chat just so people have the link. Um, it will tell you everything it knows about your message, the IPs it came from, the authentication, passing failures, uh, where you potentially are facing challenges. It's written by a consultant based out of Ireland. It's a great tool if you're concerned about, are you set up? Cadence, frequency, how many messages you're sending. Consistency is also another big thing, right? A lot of spam filters are based on sort of a machine learning. They like patterns. They like to know if you mail Tuesday at 2 o'clock, next week you're going to mail Tuesday at 2 o'clock, right? They're looking for those patterns. If you're adjusting your patterns or your send volumes a lot, like one day you send 1,000 messages, the next day you send 1,000,000, there are things like that that were going to impact your ability to send mail, unless that's your regular pattern. 1,000, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000,000, right? If that's your pattern, the machine will learn it. So just make sure you understand that. And then anytime you make an infrastructure change, right? You migrate IPs, you migrate providers, you change domains, you need to do a proper warm up. Without fail, you need to do a proper warm up. Talk to your provider, talk to your services, your IT team, make sure that they understand these types of things. And then, inbox is inbox, right? And I said this right at the very beginning. All of these tabs for Google are the inbox. I have conversations weekly with people that are like, oh my God, I'm in the promo tab. I want to be in the inbox. So definitely make sure that you understand these are the inbox. Customers want the primary inbox for communications between people. They want promotions to go in the promotions tab. They're going to go look at those promotions when they're ready to look at promotions. They don't want their daily routine of personal communication interrupted by random promotions. Google has two inboxes. They have the inbox and they have what's called the focused inbox or other tab. Other is where they're likely to put marketing messages compared to their focused inbox. And then there's also the spam or junk folder or bulk mail folder, depending on the mailbox provider you're looking at, right? Tabs are a thing. More mailbox providers are likely going to roll out tabs in the future. So just get used to the idea that if you land in a different tab than the primary tab, you're still in the inbox. There are lots of great resources. This will be shared. I know there was a question that came through around will this be shared? This will be shared. These links will be active. There are lots of great resources you can go look at. Several of them I've talked about today in regards to services or things that you should be looking at in regards to monitoring your email or even staying up to date in regards to what's new. How do you learn something? How do you follow the rules? All of these different pieces are readily available. These are some great resources that we work with regularly to help those conversations and keep educated ourselves, right? We need to continuously educate ourselves in order to continuously help our clients as the goalposts move on a regular basis. So, Larry, I'm going to let you wrap up here.
Sure. Here at Email Industries, we're an email deliverability consultation firm, and our focus is exactly all the things Matt has been talking about today. We provide a variety of services from both packages to long-term engagements, from expert consulting to comprehensive audit services, remediation and optimization, monitoring and alerting, so you can know when challenges are about to happen and how to prevent them before they're impactful. We also support with reactivation programs and more domain warm-up and IP warm-up. We do have a custom email infrastructure and MTA engineering team on staff, so we help build USPs and grow them, as well as just general deliverability training and staffing solutions for your team we support with. So, and we do have an agency arm as well, where we do content generation and helping deploy and run your email program. So we support everybody from the mom and pop shops to the Fortune 1000s. We have extremely competitive pricing. We really do want to be an email solution for all. So that is kind of us in a nutshell. We'll provide our contact information here on the next slide, as well as after the call. So happily, we're offering some free health checks currently through our website. So if you want to get a quick free health assessment of your email deliverability, we're more than happy to supply and give some insights. I know we did run a little bit closer to crunch time. As I said in chat, myself and Matt are going to stick around for a little bit and help answer some of these questions that were not answered. So feel free to continue to add those to the Q&A. And of course, if you did have a set cutoff, we appreciate you joining us today. Thank you again to Unspam for partnering with us and having us here for this presentation. And yeah, we'll go ahead and start hitting all the questions. Let me go on in. We had a couple in the backlog, Matt, for you that I'd love your insights on. So when it comes to feedback headers, sometimes they're confusing to me. I don't know how to apply what you're saying into the real world when you're looking at feedback. What would your suggestions be?
Yeah, so the feedback ID header, Google has a great support document around the feedback ID header. This should be something that your email service provider is taking care of. They're going to be able to insert those values into their own message headers that are going to include things like which message ID, which list ID, potentially which account ID. And then the fourth value should always be an ESP token. So depending on the ESP you're using, if it's constant contact, they might use something like CTZT. MailChimp might use something like MC. Klaviyo, I think, uses like K1 in that value. Then the rest of those IDs are tied to the message or the account. What that then does is Google, when they see those show up in messages that people have reported as spam, as an example, through their web UI, in the Google Postmaster tools, hopefully you're going to see those tokens. Those tokens will then be assigned, how many complaints did we get? So if you send, 10 different segments a day, and you're going to get 10 different feedback IDs. Google might actually show you like feedback ID 1234 got 0.01% complaint rate, but feedback ID 4321 got 0.5% complaint rates that day. You can then take that and work back. Well, what segment was 4321 and why did it get so many more complaints than segment 1234? That's what they're trying to use within that information and provide that feedback to senders or to ESPs to say, these are your problem campaigns, these are your problem segments. What they're trying to avoid, though, is here's an individual that reported you as spam, right? Google doesn't want to do that for privacy reasons. So the feedback ID is a set standard where there's three sort of floating values, and the fourth value should be an identifier to the network that's sending it. It's not something typically that a brand itself will set unless you control that yourself. And again, if you do, think about the values 1, 2, and 3 of campaign list, message ID, something along that line. That you're going to then hopefully get that feedback from Google. And again, like I said, Google only show that data if they believe it's aggregate enough to not be identifying to an individual. So that's the basis of the feedback ID header. It allows you to get some feedback that is non-identifying to an individual, but is identifying to a campaign.
Thank you. The next one we had was any advice on what to do with unengaged contacts, no opens or no clicks?
Yeah, I think this is this is probably something if you've talked to a delivery consultant in the past, they would say just stop sending to them, right? I like to build segments around new users, hyperactive users, less engaged users, unengaged users, and then what I call them lost users. So these are users that maybe haven't opened or clicked a single email in 12 or 24 months, depending on what your window is for that period. And as those people fall to the less engaged and eventually into that lost bucket, you want to send them a different stream of messaging. And maybe as they're entering that lost bucket, you send them a last opportunity to say, clearly you're not engaged with our email. Clearly, you don't want it. You haven't clicked, you haven't opened, you haven't taken any steps. And if you're able to tie, say, offline purchases, because there are people that just get your email and they're like, oh, I got to go pay my credit card bill. And they just log in and they pay the credit card bill, but they don't click the email, right? But if there's activity that coincides in a relatively short period to an email, or like, oh, there's a sale at, the store that I wanted to go to anyways today. They didn't just show up. They don't necessarily need to look at the email. So you have to kind of watch out for that. But it's not typical for someone who is moderately engaged in your program to never open and never click. But if these people never open and never click, you want to stop sending to them. Send them a final message that says, click now or we're going to stop emailing you. If you want to come back in the future, we'll gladly accept you back on the list in the future.
Good. Let's see. On my way down here. Let's see, we had some other. Are there any specific ESPs that you recommend based on their deliverability? Kit, MailerLite, Constant Contact. Of course, it has a lot to do with emails you put together for your business, but are there certain ESPs you think that are better for deliverability?
Yeah. I mean, I've worked at half a dozen ESPs over my career, and ESPs target different types of mailers, right? You have your enterprise class ESP, your Salesforce, your Epsilon, your Oracle, etc., right? Those are looking at large enterprise. They're catering to very complicated programs. Then you have what I look at as more of your small business ESPs, your Constant Contact, your MailChimps, maybe even like a MailerLite or an Aweber. So they're looking at smaller senders that are just getting started. They're trying to help you with best practices. They're trying to put up some guardrails to kind of keep you in line. A lot of this, as we move into the future with domain reputation over IP reputation, and that's really what we're starting to see. Like Google is really big on domain reputation. The ESP doesn't matter as much. It's really about the behavior of the sender. Now, of course, if you have a ESP that lets on all kinds of spammers and sends a bunch of phishing and that kind of stuff, certainly it's going to cause problems for your brand as well. Because there is the idea of your reputation, but also your network reputation. All of these that are legitimately trying to do the right thing take steps to make sure that their network IPs and their network reputation is as good as they can make it. On top of that, then becomes the sender's responsibility. So, I mean, understand your needs for an ESP, understand your expectations of that ESP. But when it comes to like recommending is one better than the other, I mean, I don't necessarily think that that is um, something that I could quantify in any sense, because there's going to be some ESPs that are right for your business and other ESPs, maybe even in that same classification or tier of like the starter ESP or the enterprise ESP or somewhere in between, that's not right for you. So it really is an individualized recommendation. If it's something that you're interested in having a further conversation about, it's certainly something we can uh, dive into to find what ESP is the right one for you.
Fun question. Looks like we got a couple of these. Is using an email warm-up service really worth it? What are your faults, or what are your thoughts and recommendations on this?
For commercial email, no, right? You're going to do a warm up based on your ESP's point of view. Most ESPs actually, it's against their terms of service to use the warm up service in regards to trying to send mail or relay through their networks, because they're looking at it to say, are you trying to influence um, falsified behavior, as an example? If you're doing warm up and you're doing it the right way, you're sending to your most engaged users first. You're sending in a slow, measured pace. Your ESP is likely guiding you along that way. I don't believe that warm up services provide value for commercial mail in that sense.
Good. The next question is, how much does heavy HTML and complex email design actually impact deliverability?
So, I mean, the golden rule is keep your message under 102 KB. If you go over 102 KB, Google will truncate your message, right? So there is a lot of room to play with when it comes to HTML size and content of the message. What I've actually seen from brands that I've worked with in the past is implementing things like kinetic email, which is very heavily CSS driven, or AMP for email, which is scripting, and it's a completely new MIME type. Not every ESP supports it. Not every mailbox provider supports it either. Um, those brands that implement interactive live in your inbox type emails see a huge increase. I've seen 3 to 4x increase for people that receive the interactive version compared to people that receive the static version. Now, the balance to that is they're a lot more complicated, and you really do need to work with an ESP to help build that interactivity uh, into your program, because there's some backend stuff you need to build, there's API stuff you need to build, but some of those messages get really kind of cool and interactive. You can have a spin to win, you can have a scratch off in your email, you can have fill out this form and book an appointment directly from your email, add to cart directly from your email. I've even seen demos of services. I've never seen it live, but I've seen demos of service where you can pick the seat you want on the plane you're about to take uh, directly from the email as you check in. So you could do a check into your flight directly from the email and say, I want this seat. And then you get your QR code. So, I mean, you can get really creative with interactive email, but it's a lot more work and a lot more effort that not everybody is willing to take, because maybe only for 25% of your list or receivers or recipients might see it.
Okay.
But I do like the idea of highly engaged interactive email.
Absolutely. I think our final question here was, is a dedicated IP address worth it? We're considering switching ESPs and noticed that this was a feature at one of our ESPs. What are your thoughts on it?
There are lots of pros and cons to dedicated IP. Pro of dedicated IP is you get on your own for reputation. Clearly, you're going to have network reputation. That's going to exist on any platform. But when it comes to, is another sender going to impact your IP reputation? No, because you're on a dedicated IP, you're going to impact your IP reputation. So if you have great practices and your volume is significant enough, and this is something I think a lot of people don't always consider when talking about dedicated IP, you have to have a decent amount of volume, right? If you're not sending 20,000 messages a day at a minimum, I would say, it's probably not worth having a dedicated IP. Your volume's just not big enough. It's going to take you forever to build reputation. It's going to take a long time. Small fluctuations in complaints or bounces or things like that can really impact your reputation. But if you're sending several million email a month on a daily sort of cadence of, tens of thousands of messages, absolutely. If you are a well-behaved sender, dedicated IP is worth it because you get rid of the third-party impact, predominantly get rid of the third-party impact for your messages.
Final thoughts, final questions. Anybody got any last things to ask while we're still here? Going once, going twice. Very good. I think that was everything. So after this call, we will be providing the presentation deck. We'll be providing a recording of this to everyone. We'll also be providing the Q&A answers we had here in chat. Other than that, we thank you again so much for joining us on this webinar. Thank you again, Matt, for your time as always and helping make the email space a healthy and safer place. We appreciate all your time and yeah, hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thanks to Unspam for partnering with us and hosting.
Yeah, very fun. Looking forward to doing it again, hopefully.
Right on. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.